us to gain access to the penalty funds. And the driver for that is not all our stations at the time that I arrived here were ALS. So when we achieve that benchmark, all our fire stations now are paramedic engines. They're staffed fully. We were allowed to go back and participate in the county program. We have every quarter, what we are able to do for the ambulance response time is buy downtime. For us, we're able to get to the scene quicker, provide advanced life support. That buys the ambulance some time on their response times. But they still have to meet the criteria, and that's administered and administered by the county, REMSA. And quarterly they will provide, they track the data, they interpret the data. We meet with them on a quarterly basis, and then based on the numbers, we're awarded a certain amount of dollars. This last quarter, I believe, was about $80,000. To finances credit, to your support, what we've done now is those funds are earmarked specifically. They're parked in the general fund. They are a dedicated funding source only for fire, and by contract, we're only allowed to use that for anything that deals with response, EMS-related activities. So in this case, this is really helpful because I think, if I look at Scott, I think 3 years, went back 3 fiscal years, where we were attempting to include the replacement needs of our MDCs, and we just simply didn't have the funding. This is before you tonight because half the fleet is not working. It's a firefighter safety issue. We're also going to update and go from the air cards, which is the technology, to a hardwired cradle point. So connectivity and reliability are going to improve 100%. So those are the 2 things that we're getting out of this process, including putting an MDC in the truck company. Truck 4 at Station 4 has not had an MDC in it, and that is a real safety and operational issue. So we'll be able to address that, including putting a new MDC in the medic unit that you just approved for this fiscal year.
Thank you. The question I have is, everybody gets the Best Buy ad.
Yeah.
And so, what my question will be, the cost of 8 computers for that much money. Maybe you could talk about that.
No, and it's a good question because these are not commercial grade. These are commercial grade specific to public safety. So the specifications of these MDCs are specific to the public safety. They're the same model and spec as what is used in law enforcement. Law and fire use this across the board. So it's an industrial version of what you could buy commercially, but it's built specifically for and I think it's identified in your staff report, the rigors of what we have to encounter using those devices. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, I just want everybody else to know that too, because I got questions today about it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Basically, they're designed to take a beating.
And keep on ticking. Yes.
That's right. Keep on ticking. I'll move approval.
All right.
Thank you.
Was there a second?
Second. Yeah.
Please vote.
Oops.
I think you.
No, that's not supposed to be a no.
Is that a yes vote there, Russ?
That's a yes vote.
Just a red yes.
All right, so that passes.
Thank you.
I double clutched my thumb there or something.
Okay, up next is communication from the public. Anyone who wishes to address the council regarding items not on the agenda may do so at this time. Sarah, do you have any requests?
I do. Your first speaker will be Susan Martin, and she will be followed by Michael
No.
Good evening. My name is Susan Larkin. I am the Grant Administrator for Valley Restart Shelter in Emmett. I am also a board member of the Riverside County Continuum of Care. The Continuum of Care is an organization required by HUD, made up of agencies and nonprofits and government agencies that actually provide homeless services to Riverside County residents. Recently, the state of California approved funding for homelessness that's actually called HEAP, Homeless Emergency Services Program, not to be confused with the electrical HEAP, but Riverside County expects to get approximately $10 million available countywide for homeless solutions. The grant actually has to be spent within 2 years, and I expect that the Riverside County Continuum of Care will be releasing their letter of interest for counties and cities and nonprofits to actually ask to access these funds within the next month. The reason I'm here is because this funding requires that each city and the county declare an emergency for shelters. Excuse me. So I have spoken to Bonnie and to Linda Krupa about this, but I wanted to make sure that you and the public understand that if the city does not declare a state of emergency for shelters, that the nonprofits as well as the cities in the area cannot access these funds and will be losing out on money that we can help continue to address the homeless population situation. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hi, good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, City Council members. My name is Michael Carl with Golden Village Palms RV Resort, and what the city clerk is passing on out, hopefully you can read it there. It was a copy, but it was something that I was pretty impressed by that I wanted to share with everybody. Our snowbirds are going to be coming back. October 15th is really the time frame of the snowbird tour season coming back to our valley here. And it's a Reader's Choice Award that is through RV West, and I'll end up leaving the hard copy with the actual, with the city clerk. But in there, something I wanted to point out, not so much on my property itself, but something that I believe great recognition comes to is the visitor center for out at Diamond Valley Lake was recognized as one of the best visitor centers here along the entire West Coast. Voted not only through British Columbia, Alberta, but also including 12 other western states. And also, Diamond Valley Lake was also listed as one of the top favorite lake destinations to go to as well. And I just thought that was something fantastic to share for our community. Moving on from that, I do want to just also ask for everyone's help here, as well as city council members. As I stated already, October 15th really is the kickoff for our tourist season. Tourism is up over last year. Last year it was up by about 2.9%. We're expecting it, and that's for the state of California. It's up as well as in our valley here. We're expecting it to be even busier this coming season as well. So we're excited about that. So we want to definitely get the word out to the area businesses to sort of just clean up your place right there, the storefronts. Believe it or not, the tourists, they love this place right here. Even though, because there's so much negativity here in our community as far as, and I hear it all the time with our tourists, when they're here, they'll go out to the stores, to a restaurant, or they'll hear it from even public service, that they tell them where they're from, and they're always hit from the local people, why on earth would you come to Hemet? And yet they love the place here, and they keep coming back, and so we need to just do some training with the staff that we employ, along with Public Works, and just clean up the storefronts. So thank you very much for your time on that.
Thank you.
If I may also just state one other thing. Visit California. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Visit California. They're big on the tourism. I've been having meetings with them, and we're looking to do a trip with their staff down here, as I've done previously with bloggers and travel writers. This time it will be with Visit California, and we're hoping that October or November that they'll be out. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to thank you for bringing this positive message to the council meeting. And point out that at least the people that don't live here enjoy coming here. At least somebody sees something nice here. Up next.
Your next speaker is Steve Sandifer. He'll have 6 minutes, and he'll be followed by Howard Rosenthal.
Good evening, sir.
Mayor, council members, citizens of Hammett. My name is Steve Sandifer. Some of you know me. I don't want to say older faces, but longtime council members, Wright and Krupa, known each other for a long time. Real quick, before we even start, just a comment about your sign. I'm not sure if you're planning on putting a camera on it or not, but I just immediately started to worry about vandalism on that. And for the cost of the sign, I think you should put a camera on it and see cars going by, possibly throwing stuff at it, things like that. So with that being said, the reason I'm here, for the people that don't know, retired firefighter from the city. I was the union president prior to Dave Prieto taking over for me. I was asked by Dave and the firefighters to say a few words about what I know about the people like myself, the retirees, and some of the current people that are working that I've stayed in touch with over the last 4 years. So right before I left, I worked very briefly, just a handful of weeks with Chief Scott Brown. So I really don't, and I'm not capable of giving an opinion about what it's like to work with him because I really don't have an experience for you. But being the past president, my phone rings a lot. I stay in touch with a lot of people, and I have quite a few comments and opinions from them that I told them I would share with you on their behalf. So, real quick, what some of the firefighters that have recently retired and some of the ones that are still here have to say are that in the last 2 years, they've been filled with individual firefighter complaints against the chief. Exactly how many, I don't know. You would know. You're the city. You've received the complaints, so I know that it's a few and possibly more. There's been a recommendation from a city-selected team building consultant to terminate the chief. There's safety issues regarding fire equipment. Most recently, a fire engine that was returned back to the city against the wishes of mechanics, and because it wasn't ready to be put in service, which is a safety issue. Safety issues regarding the fire equipment there. Lack of proper staffing for strike teams. Several people have told me that the wrong number of people are being put on the engine and showing up to participate in these strike teams without the right number of people on board. And when you go out of town to these fires, your chances to get injured and possibly killed go way up. Most recently, we've had 2 deaths up in Reading. One of their firefighters and a bulldozer operator were killed in that fire. We had a fire right here, the Esperanza fire. People were killed here. Cedar fire in San Diego. These big fires like that are very dangerous and require maximum amount of safety and a piece of equipment that's ready to go and a staff that's fully staffed. So I'm a firm believer in that. I think Linda and Bonnie both remember I'm still on with the CAPF, the California Association of Professional Firefighters. So if a firefighter's injured and it's not workers' comp, I know about it. From San Diego to Northern California, we cover all of them. We recently mailed checks to the widow of the Jeremy Stoke, firefighter that was killed in Reading. We're doing stuff like that all the time. And, when it comes to safety, I don't compromise. So, a number of former employees have conveyed their severe frustration with the chief and have cited his self-serving behavior and pattern for retribution against employees who disagree with him as the reason for leaving. So in other words, people that would have stayed and worked longer have chosen to leave because of their differences. There's been a Hammett Firefighter Association membership survey,
It was an internal survey that clearly showed that firefighter personnel were frustrated to the point where they were considering transferring to other departments. So these would be the people that aren't old enough to retire, but looking at their option of, separating from the city and going somewhere else. Our best and brightest firefighter personnel will continue to leave, and Chief Brown will continue to stack up more liabilities for the city as long as he remains in his current position. It is a certainty that departing personnel will continue to highlight the chief's issues and the resulting liabilities to the city. It's my belief that every attempt has been made by the firefighters to work with Chief Scott Brown. For nearly 2 years, those attempts have been failed because of the chief's self-serving behavior and retribution against firefighter personnel who try to keep and or hold the chief accountable. Former employees, dedicated professionals like myself, who have served the residents, are asking for the City Council to put an end to the deteriorating conditions of the Hemet Fire Department and put new leadership in charge. Thank you.
Thank you. Who's next?
Howard Rosenthal, and he'll be followed by Pat Gregory, and Pat has 6 minutes.
Yeah. Hello again.
Mayor and council members, before I speak to the subject I came to speak to, I want to again call attention to the Western Science Center. It's a Smithsonian affiliate. It sees over 35,000 people a year. It's debt-free. There's over $200 million in cash invested between the museum and school campuses, the Valleywide complex. There's over $159 million invested by Metropolitan for the infrastructure. On Saturday, this coming September 8th at 5 o'clock, will be our annual Science Under the Stars. This year, the topic is the science of medicine. One of the most prestigious scientists in the world, a Dr. Liu, an engineer, will come and give a 20-minute talk. She is one of the leaders in tissue regeneration, polymers, ceramics, and nanotechnology. Because a lot of us don't know that engineering schools are designing the new medicine. So it should be fascinating. It's $125 a head. It's all you can eat. Europa Winery from Temecula. My friend Dan Stevenson is doing all the wine. It's under the twinkle lights, 400 to 500 people. Supervisor Washington says there's not an event in wine country that matches it. We're proud of it. It's 20% of our annual revenue. That's how important it is, because you can't pay your bills charging tickets at the door for a museum. So that's my minute and a half or a minute of advertising. I think, did I pick up 3 more minutes?
Actually, yes. Judy McPherson is up right now.
Thank you. I'm here to speak, much as my friend Steve Sandiford did, in favor of the chief. I am friends with a number of firefighters and respect the heck out of them. Fire and police put their lives on the line every day. I'm one of the only people in the business community that stood with the Public Safety Coalition, Linda and Bonnie, Russ, you weren't on the council yet, to fight to save a 102-year-old department. It was rigged for that fire department to go. It was after that, and the public protest that I designed, that the fire department was saved, that led us to look at what are we going to do with rising crime, a lawless state, and a fire department that had been intentionally broken down. What are we going to do about crime and safety? So we formed Keep Hemet Safe. I'm the chair of Keep Hemet Safe. The goal was initially did not include fire, because my friends who I needed money from, all public record for the PAC, did not want to support Hemet Fire. They did not support Hemet Fire in the Public Safety Coalition. You won't find too many people from the action group that were with me in that fight, along with those that led it. They had an attitude that the fire departments had a long history in Hemet of being run by the unions, having too much overtime, and they wanted to throw it out to CAL FIRE. I didn't agree with them that long-term, Hemet would be best served with CAL FIRE. And I think the last couple of years of their increases to contracted cities have helped validate that. Now, we raised $440,000, public record, for Measure E, which lost by 600 votes, and Measure U. It took Fire Chief Scott Brown to get a commitment to support money to fire. Truth. My friends just wanted cops. Their attitude was, if we lose a few buildings, so what? They didn't want paramedics. They didn't want cops. Only wanted cops. Scott Brown and Dave Brown sat me down and said, you need to put money to fire as well. And I turned from that meeting upstairs in this building and said, I need to bring in the following handful of people. You need to show them what you just showed me. Without Fire Chief Scott Brown, you would not have had a PAC that would have made the commitment to raise $3 of the $10 million a year for 10 years for fire, number one. Number two, the business community intentionally has supported the fire chief. It is no secret, it's public record, how many firemen all are in their key. You have 4 or 5 guys making over $300,000 a year with all benefits in. Now, overtime has killed us, and we need a chief who's going to restructure how we go about delivering service. So I'm here to speak and ask the council, it's time to make it very clear in public that this council majority supports its fire chief. So we stop what's been going on for 7 months. I think it's been very clear across the senior community and business community, the respect, the admiration, and the support for our fire chief. I'm sorry I disagree with friends of mine who I respect, but I do disagree. And there are no secrets in this world. So there's plenty of minutia on how this happened and that happened, but I think any claim that the chief operates in an unsafe manner is politically motivated, and I don't doubt that that's what my friend Steve Sendifer's been told. I don't buy it. I ask you tonight, send the public a message. You support your fire chief. Thank you.
Thank you, Howard. Pat.
Pat will have 6 minutes, and then she'll be followed by.
Good evening. Originally, I had a written statement prepared, but I decided against it after I watched this council approve expenditure after expenditure. So I'm going to ask you a question instead. What in the world are you thinking? I'm looking at this agenda, and it appears to me that under the government code and under the Ralph Brown Act that there's a possibility that you're considering replacing the city manager. Now, there has been a lot of talk about transparency. Well, I don't see anything transparent. All I see are a lot of meetings at 4:30 on weird days when people usually aren't accustomed to, and all they're allowed. I just don't understand it. So I'm going to put my 2 cents in. If you plan on putting in a new city manager, it will be 12 in 12 years. Do you realize how ridiculous and incompetent some of you look because of this? There has been a number of council members who have been sitting at that council for at least 5 to 6 years and continually voted for fiscally irresponsible budgets. Those same council members have also voted in city managers and then voted them out within the same year. So either council members do not know how to vet a city manager, or they don't know how to work with them. I don't think the problem is the city manager. I think the problem is with some of the city council. And here's my question, is how can you not allow someone to do their job? Apparently, and now I have to admit, when Mr. Parker first came in, I was a little vocal about not appreciating his background. And some of you sat up there and told me, we know better. We have better information. And I think that's pretty much a quote. And apparently you don't. Because here you are, maybe anticipating another city manager, which would be absolutely ridiculous. Councilwoman Krupa in 2015 went on record saying that this constant turnover needed to be addressed. Yet, here we are 3 years later, 3 managers later, and you're still possibly contemplating this. I have no idea how 2 older council members, and I don't mean old in age, I mean old in length of stay in their positions, how they've been able to continually approve fiscally irresponsible budgets. I don't know how they've been able to continually have a revolving door policy for their city managers, how they continually allow a city budget that has a city attorney amount that far exceeds any other city in the surrounding area. I think it's time that some of you city council people either need to step down or not go for re-election in the fall. We need new blood on the city council because the old blood looks really sad. Again, I'm going to say, I don't think it's a city manager issue. I think it's a city council issue. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. I'd like to point out real quick that the budgets are always passed by law. They have to be balanced. So all of this talk about nobody's passing a balanced budget in the past is baloney because every single budget had to be balanced. It's how you balance that. Also like to point out it's not 12 city managers in the last 12 years. There were several interim city managers for a number of different reasons. I think you had 3 permanent city managers after Nakamura. The thing I'd like to talk about, though, most of all, is the fact that the Measure U committee was a part of what I worked on, and before that, I fought like hell to preserve our police and fire department. I had that experience for 3 years. I think we worked together to get that done, and we had a council prior who had actually voted to get rid of our fire department and send them off to CAL FIRE. I feel very passionate about that. I feel very strong that it's critical and important that Hemet has its own fire department for a huge number of reasons. However, I do not feel like the union has run or has conducted itself recently in the way that I think is proper. And the reason for that is the changes that have been implemented, if they didn't like them, most of the time they didn't like them in the past. Having dealt with being beat up sometimes by the different unions as a council member, we would go through and talk through these issues. The problem was, just like Howard said, as far as the community went, that the business community that we were working with to try to save the fire department and try to include them in public safety measure, they absolutely were against it. Like Howard, took a lot of heat from that. We both stood up and said, we've got to do this. But the person who carried that over the line, and I think if the fire department and the firefighters knew what was said regarding them and how it was said and how it was done, they would be very surprised. Because Scott Brown was their biggest champion over and over and over again. He also presented to us as a committee what would be done so that they would be effective, efficient, and the department would be run so that the city of Hemet could afford it. So being effective, being efficient, and being affordable was our goal as a committee when we got that public safety measure passed. And I'm very disappointed in how things have gone lately and how they are being approached. I want to tell you that I think that you need to keep your fire chief. I think you need to sit them down, and everybody needs to get at the table and work this out.
Thank you, Lori.
Yes, we have a couple more. So Tammy Radomski, and then she will be followed by Scott Bailey.
Good evening. On a much lighter note, I agree with the mayor and with the city manager. While it's important that we continue to look for cost-saving measures, that a huge part of digging ourselves out of this hole will be to look at the increase in income. So I believe the city manager came up with the idea of really marketing Hemet for all the outdoor potential that it has. And I recently returned from a family reunion trip in Ohio and Pennsylvania, and I was really excited to learn the sport of pickleball. Now, I grew up in Florida. I consider Florida my hometown, and I'm getting ready to go back for my reunion. I'm not going to say which one. But anyway, I was so excited to learn the sport and to look over at another court of players where these people had to be in their 70s and 80s, and they ran that court like nobody's business, and that's what I want to do when I'm that age. The thing about the advantage of pickleball over tennis is it's a smaller court, so you could have more courts on the same size piece of land versus tennis. But don't get me wrong, I love my tennis, and it was really frustrating playing the pickleball because I was about 2 inches short on a lot of shots because it's with racquetball racket. But I would just like to offer that as a way to bring in income, not just as an everyday sport, but you could sponsor this city because of our climate. It's much cooler than Palm Springs, but you could have it as a year-round tournament, and then you could even have indoor tournaments as well. So I just wanted to offer that suggestion as a way to bring in some income as well as continue to look at cost savings. Thank you.
Thank you.
Tammy, Golden Village Palms, Michael Carl that was here, they have a lot of courts, and a lot of their seniors come here because they have pickleball, and they're expanding their facilities.
And I was thinking of the Canadians.
But Dean Letter, don't you have pickleball out at Valleywide?
Yes.
Would you tell us how many you have, and do you do tournaments?
Thank you, Councilwoman. I represent Valleywide Recreation and Park District. I'm their general manager, Dean Wetter, and we do have facilities for pickleball. And you're right, it's one of the fastest growing sports. It is a tremendous benefit to the community. We have 2 courts that do both competition and recreation play at Diamond Valley Lake Community Park. And we also have shadow line courts at our regional park facility right here on Esplanade, just west of State Street. And we're currently looking at building 2 additional courts out at the Diamond Lake facility because of the need.
It would be awesome if you could have a tournament because that would offset some of the increases in.
Maybe you can talk after or outside the council chambers. Thank you.
Tournament started. Thank you, Tam. Okay, Scott Bailey, and then he will be followed by Melissa Diaz Hernandez, and that is your last speaker.
Okay. Good evening, sir.
Hello, council. Some of you may know me. It's been a while. Retirement. I'm up here with a very heavy heart. This is a community that's very divided over the issue of the fire chief in particular and some of the actions that the fire department is doing, etc. I need to point out that the difference in the Firefighters Association and, say, some of the general members of the public are that the Firefighters Association are made up of professional firefighters that have extensive training, experience, certifications, etc., such as myself and my other colleagues. Now, what may be said or done in public versus some of the things that have been done within the organization, within the fire department, a lot of the public is not aware of those things. I've prepared a statement here, and it really saddens me to read this, but I find it necessary. Members of the City Council and the City Manager, my name is Scott Bailey. In March of 2018, I retired from the Hemet Fire Department as a fire captain. I was also a certified acting battalion chief and served in the capacity of administrative fire captain when the position was changed in order to survive through the recession. While an administrative fire captain, I fought to be reassigned so I could remove myself from Fire Chief Scott Brown's direct supervision. And I submit this information that it is a matter of public concern. It is my understanding that during Fire Chief Scott Brown's employment with the city, 3 of his direct subordinates working as administrative captains requested reassignment. 1 battalion chief has taken a voluntary demotion. A secretary and emergency services coordinator have left the department through early retirement and or resignation. And 2 current direct subordinates have tested for other organizations that you currently have. I, as well as others, have filed complaints against Fire Chief Scott Brown. I have also had to retain legal assistance to rebuff Fire Chief Scott Brown's retaliation against me. In my opinion, Fire Chief Scott Brown has exhibited unacceptable behavior and demonstrated a lack of confidence in many areas. Further, I believe that PNW Associates, which was contracted by the city to evaluate the situation in the fire department, reported findings to the city manager that resulted in Fire Chief Scott Brown being placed on administrative leave. Fire Chief Scott Brown, I believe, poses a liability to the city both administratively and in emergency management. I believe the time is right for the City Council to remove Fire Chief Scott Brown from his position. I understand the City Council is frustrated and angry with the Hemet Firefighter Association for publicly bringing forth issues with Fire Chief Scott Brown. I also understand and can relate to the frustration and anger of the personnel that have to operate under Fire Chief Scott Brown. The entire situation itself is tragic.
Thank you, sir.
Conclusion?
Yeah, your time has expired.
Thank you for your time, and I'm sorry to be here, and thank you. Very sorry to be here.
Melissa?
Gotta come down quite a bit. Melissa Diaz-Hernandez. I now live in Idlewild, but I work within the city limits of Hemet, and my 2 children are here part of the time. So I am still invested. Is it we good? It's pretty, okay. I want to make sure.
You're invested.
All right, I am invested. Thank you. So I appreciate you letting me speak. I think it would be in the community's best interest if they began to dig into where money came from, who it was going to, and the outcome of those funds, as well as who owns which parcels of property in this town. It would be enlightening. Thank you.
Thank you. Marie McDonald, you had a request also.
Again, City Council, thank you for giving me time. I just wanted to make it very clear that Measure U Oversight Committee developed a financial plan which we felt would protect the city, protect the community, and directed Chief Brown to follow that plan, which he has done. We've been very pleased with the overall outcome and feel that he has followed our direction without changes, without argument. He has done his job well.
Thank you. Howard, you asked to speak. You said you had some time. I'll give you 1 minute.
20 seconds. Thank you for the accommodation, Mayor. I think one of the most material things I forgot to say was that 2.5 years ago, when the current Sprouts in Burlington was still the old Walmart, and I was standing out there kicking off with the district attorney, police chief, fire chief, clergy, the Measure E campaign. I was lobbied in that parking lot by some of the same retirees here today to get rid of Scott Brown. That's 2.5 years ago. So just think about that. What I was told was we had lots of calls from Orange County. He's not right for us, blah, blah, blah. My response was, guys, I'm not even getting into this discussion. We finally got the business community to raise the money to fully fund. So just keep that in mind. 2.5 years ago, that was the lobby. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, there are no more speakers. Okay. All right, moving along, item number 26, which is a public hearing item. City of Hemet Landscape Maintenance District number 106, Hemet Auto Mall, and Streetlight Maintenance District 106, Hemet Auto Mall. Welcome back.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, members of council. Good to be back. So this is one of our standard formations, our public hearings that we hold in the formation of our landscape and streetlight maintenance district. Back on June 26th, we initiated proceedings with the approval of a couple of resolutions to go ahead and get the levies established and the districts formed for this particular property, which is on Warren Road, south of the existing auto mall. It's the area that they're developing. There are 5 parcels that are included in both of these districts. So, as we always do, we noticed our public hearing. We sent out ballots. I believe that the city clerk has received 4 ballots for each of the districts, maybe 5 at this point. Okay. What we're asking you to do is go ahead and open a public hearing, ask for input from the public regarding this formation, and then upon closing the public hearing, we would have the city clerk read those ballots. What we would need in order for the formation to pass, to be affirmed, would be a 4 affirmative vote out of the 5. So that's where we're at.
Okay. So with that, I will open the public hearing for the Lighting and Landscape Maintenance District. Is there anybody here that would like to speak in favor of? Seeing nobody make a run to the microphone, is there anybody here that would like to speak in opposition to? Seeing nobody rush to the microphone, I will close the public hearing. Sarah,
If I may, while Sarah's doing that, we did have an opportunity to talk to one of the owners, Chris Thomas, our representative from SOMAS, who is the one who develops these engineering reports for us. We had an opportunity to talk to one of the owners, and I know it's come up in the past. There is interest in establishing a dormancy agreement. They would like to take care of their own landscape. Just as a reminder for the council, basically what that means is we form the district. We have an agreement with them to handle that landscape maintenance. If they don't perform, we're able to press the button to assess the district and take the maintenance back over.
So with that, they're not being levied the lighting and landscape special assessments now until they fail to perform on their end?
Specifically, landscape. Lighting we will always assess because we want to make sure.
The district will be formed, but they're going to take care of it, and when they fail to perform on their end, then you can...
Correct, and actually this formation actually, even if it weren't being considered for a dormancy agreement, would not be assessed until the 1920 year because we just completed our assessments for this current fiscal year, so good.
Thank you.
So, Councilmember, so far I have 4 ballots in support of Streetlight Maintenance District number 106. Landscape. do have 4 ballots in favor of Streetlight Maintenance District 106 and 4 ballots in favor of Landscape Maintenance District number 106.
Okay, so that meets the threshold
So at
to
this
form it?
point, correct. So at this point, we would ask that you would adopt resolution bills number 18-073 and 18-074.
So moved.
No, second. All right. Linda and me. Please vote.
Thank you, council.
All right, and that passes 5-0. Okay. Up next, item 27, SCE street light pole purchase and street light LED retrofit funding options. Public Works, again.
So with this item, we would like to shed some light on some long-term savings for the city. See what I did there? Okay. This project shed some LED lighting. This project we have been talking about for years. As you can see on the bottom, we've got a full team that has been working together for over 4 years now, I believe, to get us to this point today. And I'm going to run you through some of these slides quickly and spend some time on, a little more time on others. But I just want to start out by thanking the team that has been going crazy literally for years, trying to run numbers and having things change and looking at the markets and seeing what's going on. So Tyler Masters of WRCOG is here with us tonight. He also has Daniel, and I didn't bring his last name, Soltoro. I did it? Okay, good. We also have Chris Thomas from SOMAS here, as well as Laura, Frankie, and Eric Espino from Public Finance Management. So PFM is what you'll hear me refer to them as. So, is this going to work for me? Yay. So the project itself, if you remember, is we have been given the opportunity to purchase the street lights that are currently owned by Southern California Edison within our city limits. Right now, they've got about a third of the street lights through the city. The city of Hemet owns the balance of those. The project itself really, kind of the big selling point initially was the fact that if we could own these lights and then we could retrofit them to LEDs as well as retrofit our own to LEDs, we can drop the rates that we are paying per pole right now by up to about 65%. So as we walk through this, we'll talk about those numbers. But looking over the long term for the city and looking for the long-term fiscal health of the city, we really see some pretty big savings in terms of our energy costs over a 15 to 20 year period. But basically, we've got two things happening. We've got the opportunity to purchase the standalone streetlights from SCE. It is a limited opportunity. The door is closed. They are not taking any more purchase requests. So basically what we did a year, 2 years ago, is when they said, hey, we're passing out tickets for you guys to play, we decided, yes, we'll take a ticket as a reservation. So now we're at the point where they are out, they've done their homework, and they're ready to come back up and collect, and we've got to decide how we're going to fund our purchase if we're going to do this. So that is where we're at today. The benefits of having those poles give us local control of maintenance. If any of the public in the audience has ever called into us and found out it's an SCE pole that's down, you'll find that it takes anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks for them to make replacements or adjustments. This puts that time frame, that customer service response in our hands and allows us to give the public a better service than they're receiving for less money. We also obviously will have the ability to retrofit to LED. We already talked about the energy savings a little bit. There's also a huge public safety enhancement that comes with good lighting on our streets, whether it's just people being able to drive because they see better, or whether it's truly our public safety folks who are chasing down the right color car because they're not running under yellow lights. So,
With that, real quick with that, how many of those street lights are on Florida Avenue that we would be taking control of?
So ultimately, we would have control of the majority of them. The only lights that we are not looking to take because they are not for sale are lights that are on SCE distribution poles. So if you've got an energy distribution pole with the street light on it, those aren't up for grabs. Everything else is.
But we will be getting the ones on at the intersections?
Correct. And so there are safety lights at the intersections too. If they are standalone, yes.
And these are ones that are on Florida Avenue?
Correct.
Okay.
The question is, the 4 that are on each intersection that are already switched to LEDs, those are Caltrans lights?
So yes, that are attached to the intersection lights would probably be Caltrans. We have a partial ownership in some of those intersections because of the way the jurisdiction lines split in places. But for the most part, if the safety light is attached to a traffic signal on Florida Avenue, it belongs to Caltrans. But there are a number where there's actually a separate pole that is the safety light for the intersection. Those we will get.
Okay. Very good. Thank you.
Obviously, there's potential for revenue generation if we're licensing or leasing out those facilities for small cell or other technology, and then obviously expands facility access for us for our various programs that we have where we use our banners and our holiday decorations. Very quickly, this project actually started, Tyler corrected me earlier, it was December of 2014 that WRCOG started looking at it. We jumped in the game in March of 2017 when we said that, yes, we want the opportunity to play. You can look and go through these other items, but as of today, we're looking for council consideration on the funding options. We've brought you 2 options. We did not bring you a recommendation from my level of staff. Our city manager might have some input there, but just wanted to give you something to kind of compare and look at. In terms of kind of what we expect coming up, SCE is currently out doing the field audits, so they're out counting the lights and out touching the lights that they're looking to sell us. They are about 75% complete with that. We expect them to be back to say, here's the actual number of lights, here's your invoice if you're going to play. We expect that to happen in September. November, once we, if approved, were to hand them a check for those lights, we own them. Transition of ownership to us is done. And then we would be looking at early 19 to begin the LOD retrofit, which would take a number of months. We've estimated, and again, working with Tyler, talking about the potential delivery of LED fixtures and things like that. That time frame could shorten greatly or could be expanded. But we think that this is a pretty conservative estimate of having, assuming we approve all of this, of having the streetlights transition throughout the city to LED by late 2019. So when we're talking about these financing options, there are 3 pieces of the puzzle. We have the streetlights that SCE owns. We have the retrofit of those streetlights, and then we have the streetlights that the city already owns, and all we need to do is retrofit. So we've kind of tried to break those things down when we're looking at what we need to finance or what our funding options are. Ultimately, the purchase right now would be of about 1,738 streetlights. Again, that number will be confirmed by SCE when they come back with their inventory. And then we would do the retrofit of those lights plus ours, which is a total of 6,517 streetlights in the city that would be retrofitted to LED. So looking at how the project breaks down, I know there was a ton of information in the staff report and staff reports attached to that staff report. But when you're looking at the total project cost, which is $2,182,902, that breaks down in this fashion. $715,000, a little over, is for the actual purchase of the poles. The retrofit cost for all 6,500 streetlights has a total of $1.3 million. And you can see on your slides there how that breaks out. The SCE poles are about $353,500, and the city retrofit is about $972,000. There's a 5% contingency that's included in this project cost. And what that is that is 5% on both the purchase and the retrofit numbers. Because as we do the true up, as we get out there and see actually how many poles there are, maybe we find 3 extra poles, maybe it's 5% less. We don't think that there will be a variation over about 5%, and that's kind of what the information that we've been getting has told us. So we've built that into this price. And then also there's a cost of finance issuance. So that is, should we decide to finance this through, say, a third party, there's this cost of issuance, or should we decide to kind of look at options in-house, there's still costs related to what has already been completed that we're going to need to pay that are about $8,000 less. They're about $32,000 right now. But so we just kept that in there as kind of a placeholder, and it keeps us comparing apples to apples a little bit too as we're looking at the numbers. So one of the things as we talk about financing, this is really important to grasp. We have 42 streetlight maintenance districts. Mr. Chris Thomas and W.R. Cog did an amazing job, as well as some of my staff, of going through and literally peeling back the layers and saying there are 4 streetlights in this district. There are 15 in this district. There are 22 over here. So what we found is we did that separation, and then we went back through and said, okay, of the 4 in this district, we own 2, SCE owns 2. Of the 12 in this district, we own 2, they own 10. So we really had to kind of parcel out, if you will, exactly what cost meant what for every single of those 42 districts. Very long process, and quadruple checked. So what we found is that we've got about 1,716 poles from SCE that we would purchase that fall within district boundaries. We've got another 22 that don't. They're outside of district boundaries completely, no district at all. We've got about 4,439 of our city poles that fall within districts, and then we've got another 340 that we own that are not within districts. So what does that mean? Districts, as we just formed a district, districts are the revenue source for paying for the ongoing maintenance and operations of these things. So as we go through and start talking about this, there are going to be districts that do not have a revenue source to repay a debt payment. We have parceled those out as well. And again, you'll see that breakdown as we go, but just remember that, because you'll see us looking at kind of a cash piece we can give, a portion we need to finance, and then kind of these nobodies, these leftovers that need a little help in terms of the streetlight retrofit. So again, while a majority of the facilities have a revenue source, some don't, and we have to address that. When we started looking at this at what would make the most sense, if we just had buckets of money in our streetlight districts, we should pay cash. We have a very good deal from SCE. We have a very low purchase price. It does happen to be because we do have an older community. So the value of the poles isn't like, the Marvelite poles that were set 10 years ago. They've been around a while. So we looked at cash payment from the streetlight maintenance